Go to Instagram. Let's see.
Are you addicted to?
Mhm. Yeah, cool. Even though Instagram can't really see us too well. Oh well.
Hmm. What do you mean? Is it like glitchy?
No, Instagram, they don't allow like outside streaming. You actually have to stream via Instagram.
Okay.
But streamers have found this program where you can actually stream using a third party program.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's what I'm doing today via for Instagram. But
Gotcha.
yeah, in 2 minutes we're gonna go live. Still getting my notes together. How's y'all days going?
I'm in pain today, but I'm all right.
You in pain today?
Mm-hmm.
Mm, I can feel that one. Hey man, I like where you're at, Joe. Where are you? Are you like in the studio or something?
Man, this is my meditation and writing space at the
Oh,
new
that's
house. Yeah, this was one of the key selling points on it was, we're
Yeah.
like we got ourselves a Zen den. So
that's
yeah,
beautiful.
I work
Cool.
remote 3 days a week, and so doesn't my spouse, and so gives us an opportunity to separate, you
That's
know,
nice.
talking over each other in the main space. So yeah,
That's nice.
I lucked out with this. So
That's nice.
Cool.
All right. Well, we got about 30 seconds, so I'm gonna get this thing going right now. Let's do this. Hello, guys. Welcome to the Recovering Addict podcast. I am Rich Ray. I am a recovering addict.
And I'm Brandon, and I'm a recovering addict.
hey, I'm Joe. I'm a recovering addict as well.
Yes, we are all recovering addicts. We do appreciate you guys for tuning in to our eighth episode, and that episode is called Causes and Conditions. We have Mr. Joe Conniff on the show with us
Oh,
today, and he's gonna go through this beautiful book that I have been reading. But before we do that, let's pay some bills. Mr. Brandon, can you handle this for us right quick?
well, first of all, guys, I apologize. This is not a jazz channel, so Rich is whispering in your ear and talking to you in that voice, but we are not a jazz channel. Oh man. Yeah. So guys, we want you to please, 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 please get on YouTube and just go ahead and hit the subscribe button for us. This is really just to help us be able to drive in another direction, open up every possible media direction we can. Once
Yeah,
we get to a certain amount of subscribers, we can start doing more lives from there. And so it's just a big help to us. It's not like we're trying to sell you anything or anything. We just really we need the numbers. That's kind of the biggest thing. It's for the algorithms, etc. So
right.
if you're able to do that, we already know that you guys like us on Facebook and you're on other platforms like Instagram, etc., TikTok. But if you're able to get to that website for us, check it out. Also go make sure you check out our website as well at therecoveringaddict.life. It's
Right.
therecoveringaddict.life. So yeah, that's all I have for you. I'm gonna go
Okay.
ahead and go now.
Okay. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thanks for paying the bills for us.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh
So,
man.
once again, like I said, this episode is called Causes and Conditions. Okay. And before I get going into that, I wanted to make a statement in regards to the recovering addict. All right. We are more than a podcast, guys. Our goal is to be a support system within the community. We would like to bring in addicts and non addicts and everyone to support the cause of people getting healed in regards to addiction and mental illnesses. Okay, so that is our goal, that is our mission, and we got a lot of things coming in regards to becoming a nonprofit and working with other nonprofits to actually broaden our range, and get the message out. Okay, and our message is you are not alone. All right, so let's get into this actual show. Um, I wanted to start the show off with some stuff that I had been studying in one of the books that I have been reading. And I was reading that book when I took a trip to San Antonio earlier this year in January, right before the freeze. I took a trip, and that trip was to expand my company, but it was also to go into a bit of a detox and studying mode in regards to addiction. And I found this book, and that book, it had made a lot of points in regards to what happens to our brain whenever we start addiction or whenever we start taking substances, and how it makes us addicted. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. All right, and a few points before I get into that actual book. There's a few points I want to make, guys. And if you listen to these particular points, I guarantee you'll get some knowledge in regards to addiction. One point I wanted to make, okay, and this point is called understanding drug use and addiction. Okay, many people don't understand why or how other people become addicted to drugs. They may mistakenly think that those who use drugs lack moral principles or the willpower, and that they could stop drug use simply by choosing to. In reality, drug addiction is a complex disease, and quitting usually takes more than good intentions or strong will. A lot of people don't realize that addiction is a brain disease. Okay, after I'm doing my studies, I realized that it is not just something that you can get over by saying, I'm going to get over it. It's almost like a disease of, and I don't want to, I don't want to mix the two, but it's also like a cancerous disease to the brain. Okay. You have to get some type of help to actually to start the recovery process and to actually get over this addiction disease. Okay, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into that, but I wanted to make another point that I read. Okay, most drugs affect the brain. Okay, it's called the reward circuit. A lot of people haven't heard this in regards to addiction. Okay, it causes euphoria as well as flooding it with a chemical message called dopamine. All right, so I'm gonna go. I'm teaching right now. I'm gonna get into my book right quick. And guys, you just listen for a minute, and whenever you're ready to jump in and talk about it, you let me know. Okay, so I found out there are three parts of the brain. Okay, and this is in regards to addiction. The reptilian brain, that is the oldest and the primitive part of our brain. They say it's 300 million years old. Okay, that is the survival part of our brain. Then you have the limbic brain, which is the mammal brain. Okay, it affects our memory, our emotions, and our feelings. Okay, and then you have the cortical brain, the thinking brain, the decision-making brain. Okay, that's where our creativity, where our learning, and our it's the innovative part of our brain. Okay, in the limbic part, that was the second part. In the limbic part of the brain, you have a substance, and that substance is called dopamine. Okay, it's a neurotransmitter that it is used to send a message in between our nervous systems. Okay, it plays the role of how we feel in regards to pleasure, things like food, sex, drugs. It's like the motivation part of our brain. Okay, now dopamine, it helps release a cuddling hormone called oxytocin, I believe that's what they call it. It makes us want to repeat the feel-good experience, repeat getting that dopamine. Okay, now dopamine levels rise based on food, sex, drugs. If you like hot food or stuff like that, those levels rise. Okay, drugs produce, get this, drugs produce a higher level and surges during that natural reward system. Okay, so here's an example. Food could give 100, let's just say levels, 100% of that dopamine, right? When sex might give 200%, cocaine, 300%, meth, 1000%. Think about that for a minute. So addiction starts, the problem starts when those dopamine and that reward system, whenever those levels go down, and you want to think about whenever you take that drug and you want to reach that high again, that first high that you have. So you have to continue to take that drug and try to reach that first high because your levels are going lower and lower and lower. The more you take, you feel like that level is going higher, and it really is. But you have to take more, and your tolerance becomes, what's the word? You get a larger tolerance, is whatever, however you say it. Okay. So think about that for a minute. Think about that. Think about what happens to your brain. And every time you take that particular drug, and how you are hiring your dopamine, but you're lowering your tolerance, or hiring your tolerance. I'm sorry, guys. I am not a doctor. All right. But I'm trying to study and learn this stuff and how it affects us. Okay. So I'm going to step back for a minute. Brandon, did you catch that stuff?
I did. Yeah. And so far as, I mean, I agree with most of that stuff, not everything.
What don't you agree with?
The history on the brain, the going back 300 million years, all that stuff. I don't, but that's just you and me disagreeing.
I understand.
So it is what it is.
Well, here's the thing about
I'm speaking for one side, you speak for the other.
Right. I can understand that.
But so far as the basics of that principle, absolutely. And we've talked about this before as to what's going on with like ecstasy, and how that actually causes your brain to fire at roughly 100 times its normal rate.
Right.
So there's electrical impulse. And I think one thing that I would probably touch on in this is, it is definitely a disease, and it's definitely the chemical platform of what's happening there. But then there's also the emotional side. There's the side that isn't part of your body, it's your emotions.
Right.
And this starts to form the rut of how you behave. And so you have a physical disease of the mind and of the brain that's affecting a literal biological part of your body. But what it starts to do is how we cope with that, then that builds on the other side, which is emotional.
Which is the limbic part of the brain.
Yeah, right. And right. Some people would also say that this affects you spiritually. And I feel like that as well.
Right.
We all have different belief systems religiously, but that, it all tends to conglomerate from that. So these two kind of crash into each other, and it forms an even bigger problem. Right. So you might deal with the physical side of this, but then it requires that we get real with ourselves in the emotional and spiritual side as well, in order to complete the full circle of what is happening there, and I think that's why it's so encouraged in most recovery programs, to work on that side of it as well, because you can deal with going through body cleanses and all that kind of stuff, but you may have to change the way you're thinking. And that's kind of the reason we go through what we do now, is we talk a lot about the way we perceive things. We say, we're all about changing your perception on this disease, on how you're handling this, how you're moving forward with dealing with the problem. So that's all I have to say about that.
I think about the times where I would watch everybody else, and they would, they could have a couple of drinks or whatever, and I would be jealous because they could have 2 or 3 drinks, but I would need something to get me high, in that reward system and that reward part of my brain. I would need something to get me high, to actually reach their levels. Like I'm like, okay, now 2 or 3 drinks is not going to do it. I need something in my reward system. I need something that's just going to really give me that pump. That pump. And I realized, okay, I was becoming addicted really at the first stages of me taking the drug, because I it was a let me stop for a minute, because I'm having a problem getting these words out, really thinking about what I was going through at that particular time.
Can I step in and say something while you're thinking about it?
Go for it, bro. Go for it.
What you're saying there, actually identify big time with it, because you know me, I love trap music, electronic EDM, all that kind of stuff. And to this day, there are certain types of music that I can be listening to, and I'm in the mood to get myself into a club, get into that environment, and I know what comes with it. It's almost like I get a flashback moment where I'm like, because it goes hand in hand. And this is also what, you know, we've got a culture now that certain things come with an atmosphere, you know, and you build that, and it's almost like in order to feel like you're completely entering into the atmosphere, you feel like you need to have all the components that come with that. And it is very difficult. You know, I mean, I listen to certain stuff and it just puts me in the mood to get moving. But at the same time, I've built something in my brain many a time.
Oh, man.
Where I've always identified that with being buzzed or being on something, you know what I mean, in the past. And so that's something that, once again, you know, as a recovering addict, it's not just not doing it anymore. It's also avoiding getting yourself in situations where those desires don't start to well back up, you know, I mean, but part of it too is that you were talking about the reward system. There's a certain element within us as well that says, you know, nobody's going to tell me whether I can go out and do this or go do that. But then you almost have to be the one to tell yourself, no, I can't, because I've got to cut off what I can't do. You know, I can't let that be. I don't need to have my mentality that I'm losing freedom here. I'm giving myself freedom by making a better choice.
I've lied to myself so many times saying, Richard, you can handle going out and not drinking or not taking a substance over hundreds of times. Richard, you got this. Today, you got this. You're not going to do it. And as soon as I get in that, as soon as I walk into that environment, I'm saying, all right, Richard, you lost this battle. Let's go ahead and get it over and prepare for the next battle. That sucks.
Relapse becomes your middle name.
It's like, all right, bro, you can't even defeat yourself. Come on, man. You got something to say about that, Mr. Joe? Have you ever experienced that, bro?
Oh,
by the way, hey, we didn't even say hi to Joe. We've been talking to him before we got on live. But hey, Joe,
I forgot Joe was here.
Thanks for being with us.
How's it going, brother? How's it going?
He's just over there like listening and going, "Yep, you guys are." I'll say something in a minute.
You got it, bro. Say something.
Go ahead.
No, this is great. Thanks for having me on here too. And this is a great conversation. I think it's difficult for me to look at this conversation without looking at the role of just pleasure and pain in relation to the human experience, right? Is like, you know, because despite all the negative consequences, we continue to do this, right? That's kind of like the definition of addict in short form is, you know, like, you know, we have all these consequences for it. Why would you continue to do it? You know, morally, yes, I must be 10 types of messed up. But looking at that, and you're talking about how far back this goes, whatever hundreds of thousands or millions of years, wherever that sits. And the development of ourselves is to understand that, you know, we've technologically advanced and evolved, you know, ridiculously fast. But as far as the brain and human development, it hasn't changed a whole lot. And so like that, and this is just my reading, you know, people like Dr. Mark Lewis, who talks about that. He's a neuroscientist. He wrote The Biology of Desire. And he really looks at like, you know, what is happening in the brain when somebody's using and when they're actually starting to reinforce the addiction is, you know, or seeking pleasure, which is a very natural product of being human, is seek pleasure, avoid pain, negativity bias, right? Like we're looking at all the ways to stay away from things. And it's hard to compete with drugs or food or sex, things that really, you know, kick that stuff into high gear. And so I think what he describes is what it does is where we get to this place where we've developed a feedback loop. Like you're talking about these instances in which we're confronted with, you know, oh, I gotta listen to, you know, Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood, and suddenly, you know, like, you know, thinking about the last time I bought an 8-ball of blow.
Oh my goodness.
You know, and it's
up.
like, it's been 6.5, you know, plus years since I was in active addiction, and yet it still hits all those places because I reinforce them by participating in those same behaviors by either, like Brandon, like you mentioned, or Rich, going to the club or going to the bar, participating with these people. It's not just the substance. It's not just me taking it. It's everything that I've reinforced participating in it that tells me, you know, those are all things that are part and parcel of my experience as the person taking the drugs, is the association with all of it. And so there's more than just like one reward with it. It's, you know, it's part of my identity. It's wrapped into things. And so, like you were saying, Brandon, trying to, you know, either avoid those things, or I like to look at, I gotta rewrite that story.
Yeah.
Myself.
Absolutely.
That
great.
That's really good.
It's sad how many times I could, you know what I'm saying, watch a movie and I can't watch certain movies because it'll give me that urge, or maybe not fully that urge, but it'll just bring back a memory. You know, like what I'm saying?
Crank 1 and Crank 2.
No.
Okay, maybe not that much, but that was a good example.
More like a
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh goodness, that would be the one right there. Yeah, certain movies, certain songs I can't listen to. It because it's like, man, and I'm not even listening to the song anymore or watching the movie anymore. I'm thinking about this particular time and telling myself, dude, you're so stupid, you're so dumb. How could you allow this to happen? And I'm playing this movie in my head while this other movie is playing and just going through the whole night. Anywho, so let's pay up some more bills right quick. Hey guys, thank you guys for watching the Recovering Addict podcast. Please subscribe. If you see that link below, please subscribe to our channel. We are trying to grow and we need your help, and we have a contest going on. All you have to do is press that button to subscribe, and you automatically enter the contest where you can win $200. We do this every 500 subscribers, so we have a little bit more to go before we present our first winner. Okay, so please subscribe, and if you don't subscribe, then subscribe again. All right, so let's get into some more.
That makes them unsubscribe when they do that, so definitely just do it once.
Okay, all right, let's go back. All right, so let's get into this book. Let's get into this book right here. This book right here. Let me see if you can see it. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Yes. This is called Causes and Conditions. And I started reading this book a little bit over a month ago. And I wanted to talk about, I don't want to get too deep into the book itself. You guys got to go read it yourself. You got to cop this book, okay? But I wanted to ask Mr. Joe Conniff, who we have today, who is kicking his phone, kicking the just about to mess up the whole show. He's getting nervous. Okay. There's a couple of things that are in the introduction, man, and I wanted to point out and just ask you what you were thinking when you wrote this stuff, because it's some good stuff. Okay. Once again, this book is called Causes and Conditions, and we're going to be in the introduction part. So one part that I read.
Real quick, where can people get this?
Yes,
book?
sir. Let me put that up right quick. Bow. You can get this book right here. Well, you could. This is where you can click, right, Mr. Joe, and you go ahead and tell them where you can get it.
Yeah. So thanks, Rich. That Linktree link. There's actually there's some other interviews that I've done, but the first link, when you click on that, will bring you to the Amazon page that has the Kindle version, the hardcover, and the paperback. But you can request it through most. I think the platform I published on has about 40,000 retailers worldwide, but most common ones would be Barnes & Noble online and Amazon. But definitely, if you got a local bookstore you like to support, holler at them, tell them to pull it up. My distribution partner will get it to them. So.
I got it on Amazon and it came to me within like 2 or 3 days, and I got going.
I think it's on sale on Amazon right now. 2 hardcovers like $9 off. The paperbacks on sale. Get you some. Yeah.
That's cool.
So let me read a couple of things from it. So first highlight: you should understand now that this is not a book about my disease or addiction. It's a book about addiction, yes, but I will not refer to my own personal addiction as a disease. I don't ascribe to that model based on what I have experienced collectively in my adverse childhood experiences. Substance use, recovery, and healing practices utilize peer-led programs, meditation, and mindfulness practices. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you from that, because we talk about addiction as a disease, but you kind of expand on it a little bit more in your own situation. What do you mean by that?
It's a great question. And so I want to preface this with, like, this isn't to push back against anything a disease model for the entire world of recovery and addiction. This is, more personal experience. And so I will say that when the first time that I was serious about recovery, when I was 32 and I was sitting in custody, the idea that that addiction was a disease was great for me at that time, because everything else, there was no logical explanation for why I was behaving the way I was, why I continued to use drugs and alcohol to the detriment of my health, legal circumstances, family relationships, all that stuff. That gave me like an opportunity to be like, okay, there's an explanation. Just, we're going to set it on the shelf over here and we're going to participate in this process. But about 3 years into my recovery, is I really, I was still going to 12-step meetings, but I started spending some time in mindfulness-based programs. I had a big meditation and yoga background from early recovery, from my days in custody. And it got to a point where this idea of the disease model, when I was participating in those conversations where people talking about my diseases out in the parking lot doing push-ups and those things, I'm glad that some people find a way to relate to the urgency and the need to do the work that we do to stay in recovery. For me, I didn't really feel authentic anymore. And like, do I really live with a disease? You know what I mean? Is this what's going on for me?
Yeah.
And it was really when I started the process of writing this book, which was about 3.5 years in, and I was writing that introduction, trying to figure out, how do I set the tone for, what's in this book? And I realized that my own concept of my experience with addiction was that I didn't live with a disease anymore. And what it was is that I started looking at all the things that I wrote about in the book, all the things all the inventory and work that I had done around my addiction. It was like, man, I had used drugs and alcohol over a period of time, and my relationship with them was not of the addictive variety. I could pick it up, put it down, wasn't sacrificing school and those things. And then there were circumstances in my life, those causes
and conditions,
social situations, like kind of a fork in the road for situations in my life in which my relationship to substances, as I detail in that book, changed like that overnight, because it did for me what I couldn't do for myself. When I realized, I didn't have the emotional wherewithal. And Brandon, you talk about that emotional component, is realizing what were drugs and alcohol doing for me, that I eventually learned through the process of meditation, through doing inventory, through giving back and having somebody suggest things to me. But the idea of a disease is like, it's helpful, I think, in this notion of no explanation for why I use the way that I do. I finally figured out why I used, and so it wasn't a phenomenon of craving. I knew drugs and alcohol made me feel different than how I was feeling. I didn't want to feel that way. That was the fast detour. Talk about getting that reward, getting that feel good, getting pleasure, avoiding pain. I know, so it wasn't a disease any longer to me, as I understood my relationship to substances. But I do want to say is I don't want to discourage anybody from working within that framework of a disease until we get to a point where we can actually take a look close enough under the microscope at our, adverse childhood experiences, abuse, whatever, generational trauma, whatever the case may be, man, participate in that until it's safe to step out and really get that 36,000 foot view.
Right.
No, that's it. That's it. That's go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it's also taking a deeper responsibility than just checking out with one solution to your problem, which is to say, yes, I have a disease, so I just have to live with this. No, you're really having to face the music and on all fronts. You're saying, I acknowledge that my body has been affected by this chemically, biologically, but I also have to look at the emotional side of this. I have to look at those causes and effects, and I've got to start to identify with that. And a lot of times, to me, that can mean some therapy too. That can mean some personal reflection, some meditation, some prayer, however it is that you're going to get to the nitty gritty of that, because I mean, Rich and I are living, walking examples of causes and effects. I mean, we certainly are, and I'm sure you are as well, Joe. I mean, Rich, how many times have we called each other in the midst of deep, deep trauma in our life? Mm-hmm. And immediately our solution to that was, bro, we need to go make some calls, and we need to go drown out this, because tonight's the night we're going to check out. We'll deal with problems tomorrow, but tonight, where are we going? And that's how many times did we do that? I mean, seriously, that's the way it was. That was a way of life, So I know I completely agree with that, Joe, completely.
Okay, here's another point. The areas of this book where I emphasize what works for me in my recovery should be understood as the unlearning of my addiction to substances and seen as a process of self-empowerment. I love that. The unlearning of my addiction and substances.
Yeah, this is.
Go ahead.
I think for the way that I experienced when I do it, it's actually really just building on your last question. I love that you got these back to back. Is when I started really taking a look at when my relationship with drugs and alcohol changed is, and in that book, it's probably in like the 3rd or 4th chapter, and I'm talking about these seemingly, commonplace events that happen to people in high school, going through relationships, having people betray you, things where people kind of write this stuff off is like, there'll be another woman, another relationship. And man, that's just the way people act. But not having the wherewithal in my household growing up, I had a mom who was on prescription opiates, OxyContin, during, the height of the prescription opioid crisis, 96, 2001, when I was going through those years in high school, is I didn't learn coping mechanisms with healthy relationships in my family. I don't want to say my household was messed up like that, but you have somebody who's medicating their pain with substances, and a father who's engaged in, this type of work that my dad did, which is working for a criminal organization, is accessibility to understand how to process these seemingly normal, like growing pains. That's when I learned, when I finally, I was, responding to some of the discomfort that I was experiencing, looking for some relief. Let me try, this drink and the drugs that I was using, on the weekends and those things. And I started to realize, man, this is helping me. This is allowing me to cope with these things. Obviously, unbeknownst to me, I was not actually addressing it. So I look at that as the learning component. As I learned that as my response to things, as mentioned. But when I get into the part of the book where I'm talking about unlearning it, is I'm learning how to live. People say, oh, we learn to live on life's terms, live life on life's terms. Okay, how do we learn to do that, though? Like you were talking about, Brandon, is, there's this rut, right? So it's one thing it's one thing to know that the rut's there, but if I'm going to drive down that street all the time, I'm going to have to live this life. Is when I look at that street, I got to fill that rut in. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit there hoping I avoid it, hoping that my car doesn't go off the road, this vehicle of mine, this body, where I end up having to end up in that rut again. I don't want to take that chance. And so I look at, to unlearn it is to really just to learn a new way of life. It's, and we hear about that stuff in the rooms a lot, but to me, this is about mindfulness practice. This is about grit, and, we hear about like resiliency, but actually, if addiction, and I think I say it in the book, is if addiction is this flight from reality all the time, then recovery has to be about being mindful. It has to be about being here. And I'm not saying mindful in the thoughtfulness. I'm talking about mindfulness practice of being able to be here with my experience without wanting it to be different than it is. Because, man, for 16 years, my addiction went every time because I don't like the results that I'm getting, the experience that I'm having, and I'm going to get loaded. Or I like the experience I'm having, and I know that it's going to end at some point. But if I can add some stimulants, some opiates to it, or some alcohol, I can make it last a little bit longer, you know? And so that's being out of flux. That's being out of harmony with the nature of the world. And so unlearning it was effectively learning that, man, change is just kind of part of it's part of the package deal. It's the cost of doing business. I'm not guaranteed satisfactory experiences in this life all of the time. There's going to be some, but part of that is really learning to live in accordance with the fact that, man, life is difficult at times. And there's nothing that drugs and alcohol can't make worse for me based on my experiences with them. And so I got to stop trying to do the bypass of, let me take some substances. And like I heard, you know, I'll deal with this tomorrow. Man, the tomorrows that change never came for me.
Yeah.
You know, other tomorrow.
Exactly.
Did you meditate, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
How often do you meditate?
I meditate every day. I might occasionally take Sunday off, or I'll do a lighter sit. I do a sit with my Dharma group, one of my mindfulness teachers, and a group about 20 people. But I get up Monday through Saturday, no questions asked, 30 minutes on the cushion. Within the first 5 minutes, I'm up. And then for me, that sets the pace for the day. That means, like, you know, again, is I'm giving myself the best opportunity to get plugged in, to sit with my experience before I walk out the door and the world is on me. You know, I'm like, I'm at the drive-through for a coffee and people start doing the unmanageable things that they do and the world doesn't go my way. But if I get up and I get plugged in and I do my sit, 30 minutes, you know, I encourage people to do anything, but after about 20 minutes, you know, a head and the mind can finally drop into the body and get an opportunity to actually start, I guess you'd say, kind of getting that yoke going, getting it all to come together, you know. So once I probably get a good 10 minutes of really being plugged in after everything settles, and then I can start my day from there. Because I know the minute I get into the shower after that, I'm in the shower, but I'm already in the car. I'm already at the office 25 miles north, you know, from where I'm living. I'm hardly even present for the shower. So giving myself a fighting chance is to get up and hit the cushion and sit with the reality of everything in the world, you know, when it gets on me first thing when I wake up.
Yeah, I've just now started to practice meditation, and I got to tell you, man, it's really peaceful to go into my studio and just, you know, at least, and I'm new to meditation, so you know, to take 5 to 10 minutes to actually just sit there and in the quiet and kind of like not think about anything, you know, just to actually just sit there and just and try to focus on nothing. Basically, you know what I'm saying? It's hard. It is truly hard. It's truly hard, but I mean, I'm studying it more, and it is very helpful to do it at the beginning of the day, because me, you know, being a business owner and having all these things going on, being a single father and stuff, when my day gets going at 7:30, it gets going, and I'm not stopping until 7:30, 8 o'clock, to where I'm really tired. So to kind of give me some fuel for the day, that meditation, that 5 to 10 minutes, however long it takes to just sit there and quiet after I wake up, is it's fuel for the day. So I encourage anybody, you know, listening, meditation is something you should study. It'll help you, especially addicts or recovering addicts. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to add to that. You know, I mean, like I said, we all come from different backgrounds and belief systems and stuff like that. And I actually have people from other social media groups that ask me this question quite often. I'm a Christian. And they say, you know, is meditation okay? So I'm going to address that to those out there that have that question from a Christian's perspective. Yes, it's okay. There are some things out there that are not good for you, but stilling the mind is not a bad thing.
No. And
a lot of times focusing on one single thing, you know, if you're a Christian, you focus on Jesus. If you're just trying to be still and quiet, a blacked out mind, a totally, completely blanked out mind is a good thing, because here's the thing, like you said, Rich, getting up in the morning, you need to still your mind. And you and I, and Joe, I'm sure you're the same. When you have a lot on your palate, a lot of things you're doing, you've got to get your mind completely cleared of all the junk, because And actually, Rich, what you were saying too about doing it in the morning, I think at night,
Oh yeah.
I think that's a good thing, because I'll tell you, I don't sleep.
Yeah.
I can't shut my mind off. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
you're
saying?
right.
So
That's
like,
a good
if you
time.
can spend, even if it's only 15, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that before. I've not been self-aware and then said, you know what? No, it's time for me to get up and sit still, shut everything off,
Yeah.
and just go out of my way to say my mind is not allowed to fixate on anything right now. But we have gotten so used to picking up that phone, feeding off of social media,
That's the
watching movies,
first
watching
thing.
TV shows.
The
Yeah, I mean,
first
I do
thing
it
when
all
you
the time.
wake up.
Yeah. And then on top of that, you're stressing over whether or not you're going to take care of certain things. You're already doing that job 2 or 3 times in one day, because you are mentally doing it 2 or 3 times before you even start to do it for real, and that's definitely something that I admire. If anybody can keep that discipline of doing that every single day and being, stilling your mind, that's huge. That's huge, because that's going to help a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Last point I want to make from this thing. Let's see. Stemming from a phrase coined by Johann Hari. Is that the name?
Johann Hari.
Johann Hari. In his popular TED Talk, some of the most revered people writing on our discussion addiction agree that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So, what do you mean by that one? What do you mean by that? What do they mean by that one?
So I think you can, this can be interpreted a couple of different ways. And it's one of the reasons I put it in there too is, one of the ways I look at this is I think, we see a lot. I follow a lot of different things on social media about addiction. You see a lot of folks talking about the isolation that comes with it. That comes with prolonged use, and I think one of the things. I'm going to talk about this in 2 ways, and so one way to look at it is, if I've isolated myself away from supportive community and everything else, then connection back to community is important, right? So that was one of the things that was difficult for me in getting out of my heroin addiction. Was I lived in the streets the last 6 months of my addiction, in the streets of Seattle, with other people who use. And so, like, ideally is, I was still connected to people, and I was connected to people that understood the way that I lived life. And it was hard to compete with that. It was hard to have me leave that behind, because I'd alienated myself from my family, from my friends, from my employers, landlords, all that stuff. And so one way to look at it is, in some cases, folks in active use, I think, like in my case, I still had connection to people, but I needed connection to supportive community, to people, so you could call that 12-step community, to the treatment community, to the meditation community, the mindfulness community, yoga, all of those things. I need connection to those kind of things. But it's also, to build on what I mentioned before, is if addiction's a flight from reality, so I'm disconnected from my experience, from my body, the way that it's perceiving the world right now. So to me, it's really, this goes back to mindfulness and meditation. This is about getting connected to this moment, free from the judgment that I put on it when I'm in my addiction all the time. Is I don't want this to be, it's like this idea of stress, right? Anything other than the way I'm experiencing things right now. So if I can cultivate a connection to this moment, to my mind, like, because it's all of this stuff is relational, right? It's like my relationship to substances, my relationship to the world, to people, is to understand that, I've got to look at this connection and how I'm cultivating it. Do I have a skillful connection to this moment, to my present time awareness, or am I just totally not even trying to be here? So it's easy to do it on autopilot, but for me, as somebody in recovery who spent 16 years constantly changing the way that I experienced life with drugs and alcohol, then cultivating that relationship by sitting on the cushion, by connecting to this moment and trying to be okay with it, non-judgmentally, trying to meet it with kindness, meeting it with compassion. That's what this connection is really about. Because in that, I'll see my own confusion, my own delusion about what drugs and alcohol are doing for me. I'll see that that's not a sustainable thing. Me cultivating a wise relationship with reality and understanding that impermanence is part of the deal, that I take things personally at times, and that makes my life difficult, and that stuff is just going to be unsatisfactory. Let me connect to that. That changed my entire relationship to the world, told me, man, drugs and alcohol are not going to help you at all with that, you know? And so connection to community, connection to this moment.
Yeah.
That's my perception of why I wrote that.
Yeah, when I hear that connection part, I just think about our slogan, "You are not alone." You know, and a lot of times, I mean, even in my own situation, my own experience, I truly felt like I was alone. Whether it was my family, whether it's my friends, like I felt like I couldn't tell anyone, I couldn't talk about it. You know what I'm saying? And it was only when I decided to make a connection with people in AA, in NA, or just the Recovering Addict podcast itself, to make that connection, is when I realized that there are people that are out here like me who want to build that community, who want to help me get to a point. That's why we get sponsors and stuff like that, who want to help me get to a point where they have gotten in their recovery. So I started to realize I am not alone in this. And that judgment, that stigma always pops up. It always pops up, and it will stunt your growth in recovery. It will stop you from moving forward in recovery because you feel like you're going to be judged all the time, for saying one thing. I can't mention anything because I'm going to be judged. And it was only when I said, you know what, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry. I'm going to make a connection with people. And I started to realize, as in NA, when people started to speak, it was like they're speaking my story, you know? They're speaking, they're talking to me, and they're just explaining my story for me. So that is when I made that connection. That is when I truly began to recover.
Start moving away from that experience of thinking I'm terminally unique. I'm beyond.
Yeah.
I feel that, because I was hearing my story. I was like, because I had spent so long literally diagnosing myself out of the rooms, looking for the one thing that wasn't part of my experience that they got wrong. And I said, man, y'all, you know.
Oh goodness.
And then there's a lot of that, you know, the 12-step stuff, you know, I was like beaten into a state of reasonableness, and I could hear something, and I went in, you know, the judge said it was a good idea, you know, like go and check this out. And I was at a point where, man, you know, I had tried to tell myself that nobody else had these experiences. Yeah. And when I came that last time, it was hard to deny that we all had a lot in common. And if people told me, hey, the 5 people you spend most time with are the people you become. And I started thinking, man, you didn't end up using heroin and becoming an addict on heroin until you spent time with 4 or 5 heroin addicts. You picked that up real fast. So I spent my time with 4 or 5 people in recovery. I started picking up, you know, staying sober pretty fast.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Okay. So guys, we were just going through this book called Causes and Conditions. Let me take my finger off of it, by Mr. Joe Conniff. Okay, and please go pick the book up. If you're an addict or a recovering addict, just go pick the book up, man. I guarantee you're going to feel this particular book. This guy has got some power in it, okay? We're going to take a brief commercial. Let's see, what can I pop up right quick for Mr. Brandon to talk about? Can we talk about this right quick? Bow, bow, bow. Give it to him one more time, Brandon.
Guys, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. If you are with us on Facebook or other platforms, we love that you are there. We just really need your subscribe button to be pressed. Please. So, and I know it's a long link there. So if you want to go to our website, come check it out, and you can make sure you get all the details right, because it's like a gazillion miles long there. So, but yeah, I wanted to mention something in that as well. You know, I think my personal struggle over the years has definitely been seclusion. You know, you were talking about, Rich, we make a point to say you're not alone. And I think a lot of times we maybe should change it to you shouldn't be alone right now. You know?
That's cold.
You know, I mean, seriously, because there's times that I felt like that, you know, I may not be diving into a substance, but I'm diving into emotions, and I'm diving into emotional turmoil, because I'm allowing I have nothing stopping my brain from going down a rabbit trail. When the reality is, I need to pick up the phone. I need to get on the phone with somebody, because I've gotten in some serious depression. Years and years ago, I, you know, got very, very close to taking my own life. And, you know, it's you're talking about that mental thought of there is no one like me. No one's gone through what I've gone through. No one's been through these experiences. They have no idea. They're not going to understand. I can't share it because it's shameful to my family. It's shameful to me.
Yeah.
And it starts to grow and grow and grow. And before you know it, this perception of yourself is that you are just the scum of the earth, and you don't deserve any help, and that you're certain no one wants to help you. You're certain that no one really is going to understand how much what your side of it, and also too, like you were saying, Joe, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but I was thinking about just personal life experiences and struggles that we go through. We can always make a choice. We can make two choices on just about every bad, dramatic experience that we have. We can choose to take a low road or a high road on how we perceive that situation, how we look at it. If we've taken a loss of a family member, we can let that go ahead and beat the tar out of our emotions. Or we can choose to take a high road and say, I'm not going to let this affect me. It did hurt. It was traumatic. I did get, I was taken advantage of, or I was this, or I was that. However, I'm not going to allow that situation to dictate the rest of my future and my current state of emotions at this moment. And that is very difficult, because a lot of the time, just like a substance, when we say right now, the best thing for me to do is to allow myself to drift into this substance and allow myself to check out. A lot of times we want to do that emotionally and mentally. We want to say, I am allowed to go have a pity party right now. I'm allowed to go ahead and feel bad about myself, and to just say that I'm not going to rise above it because, you just don't understand. It just hurts too much. And you know what? Yeah, you can, but it's going to beat the tar out of you and your life and your emotions and everyone else around you, because you're going to react constantly. You're going to not respond. You're going to react constantly to everything you come in contact with. You're going to be a jerk. Your emotions are going to be all over the place.
Because you're doing that reward circuit system and putting that stuff in your man, and it's
manifesting in another way. Exactly. So absolutely. So I mean, this cause and effect stuff is so powerful. Joe, I am so excited that you were with us today, because I don't think we've ever had a guest where we've talked about this side of addiction. And I got to say, it's refreshing to hear your side, because I really think I probably agree with your perception on the whole thing, probably more than anything else we've gone over, for sure.
And we've had some good stuff, and we had some really good stuff.
We have.
Yes,
and I'm not discrediting those things either. I'm just saying that I identify with what you're saying probably the most of any guest so far. So thank you.
Let's finish this thing off. So I wanted to talk about my first therapy session. Okay. And it's gonna take a lot in me to come out. But yes, I had a meeting with a therapist yesterday. Okay. And I missed 2 meetings. That was the first thing about it. I was just too busy to have my meetings, and I was excited about these meetings. But so I had the meeting yesterday in regards to my anxiety. Okay. And what I was telling him was that I'd never had anxiety before until I started taking drugs. Okay. So drugs caused my anxiety. And then whenever I was not on that particular drug and got into a certain situation, I got anxiety, and then I took the drug to get rid of my anxiety. So drugs caused it, and then I felt like drugs helped my anxiety. Okay, so what he did was, he prescribed me something called Lexapro. It's an antidepressant, and it don't know if it's an antidepressant or not after taking it, because I took it yesterday, and within about an hour and a half, I started to feel depressed. Okay. so I'm going to have to go back to him and say, no, bro, that is not the one. I'm still feeling the effects today. Like, I went to sleep. I missed the whole boxing match because I wanted to see Canelo whoop that boy's ass, and he did, but I missed it. because of Lexapro. Okay. And so, yeah, that is my experience. Now, the whole experience in regards to the therapy session, it was good to come out and, actually open up to someone who is from the other side of things and him share some things with me. But I kind of wish he wouldn't have shared that particular prescription with me, because that particular prescription.
Hey, Dr. Crispy already went over this with you before you
Oh,
had this meeting. So
yeah, you told me, and as I was getting this particular prescription, I
don't
was like,
take that stuff.
what did Brandon say not to accept?
Man.
Yeah, man. So, and mental health and mental illness is something that we try to talk about as much as we can on this particular show, because we understand that addiction and mental illness run hand in hand. A lot of times people are not mental ill until they get that chemical imbalance, and they've taken so many drugs, and now they have anxiety, now they have depression, now they're schizophrenic. I mean, it all runs hand in hand. Or people who are mentally ill, they are prescribed something that makes them addicted. So it all runs hand in hand. Okay. So that was just my story in regards to my therapy session. And I encourage people to get therapy. I encourage you to try whatever substance they tell you to try. Just me, I won't be trying any more Lexapro, okay? Because that's not for me. So anyways, you guys got anything to say about that?
Joe, I wanted to ask you, do you have anything that you want to say about your book, kind of the reason that you wrote it, the main purpose, or do you have a mission statement of sorts as to why you did this and what you're hoping for others to get out of it? I mean, you have gone over some stuff, the substance within the book, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to put it in a synopsis about why you did this, what your goals are, what your purpose is, so far as why you did it and what you're involved in.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question, Brandon. And Rich, thanks for talking about your experience too. I mean, here with two other men talking about mental health and going to therapy, I think that's huge too.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who went 3 years into my recovery because I was that miserable about other things in my life that recovery wasn't touching. So I definitely part of things is normalizing every aspect of this process.
Right.
Is a big part of the mission of the book. To even tie it to that was, the book started as something for me because so many people were asking me to share my story in different settings. Super grateful for that. But I had tailored it different ways that I realized, there's more to this than just this very, recovery is not linear, right? So there's more to this than this linear component of telling a story from start to finish. Is there's elements of this that I felt could be helpful for various people. And, my story involves my time in the service during post 9/11 military service, and involves the opioid crisis and having a family member overprescribed in a response to pain, and a seemingly innocuous, it's normal to get treated for pain, right? And being a white dude from a small suburban, almost rural town in Western Massachusetts, and ending up in a big city like Seattle and one of the largest drug diversion courts in the nation. I said, man, I did the tour, I did the world tour in my addiction. And, I realized that I could unpack a lot of those things. I could get the benefit of more insurance on my recovery by really diving in. Talk about doing a thorough inventory, man. It's go ahead and write your story, write a memoir. That's as deep as it gets.
Right.
And realizing what voice am I? Because I started it and I wasn't telling it authentically, right? And I think recovery, talk about authenticity, is living the double life in addiction is not authentic, right? I'm not being truthful with one person over here and this group of people over here. So realizing that I thought I knew what people wanted to say, and I was doing this work that was for me. And so I started to find the value of authenticity in writing the book and being truthful to myself about the things that I had minimized in my life. Because I didn't want it to look a certain way on paper or coming out of my mouth. And so, it didn't start as an intention. It's hard to answer it directly. This is the goal. I found so much in the journey of doing it that there was value for me. There was value for my family. There was value for my daughter, 10 years old, just finished the book, because I took her out into the hearts of Seattle, to pick up dopamine. I'm like, there ain't nothing in here that she hasn't already been physically exposed to. And, and so this brought some peace to my family and me, but it's also, I work in the drug diversion court that saved my life. And, I've been out of active addiction for 6.5+ years. And so my experience with the streets and my, relative nature to how, people are still coming in from their active use. It's not as recent. The book, though, is tangible stuff about that timeline, about participating in those processes that, that goes beyond the bounds of time. It's dated. It has elements and places that maybe aren't even in existence, people that aren't in it anymore. And so it was meant to serve kind of freezing this point in time, these experiences I had that are no longer really true of me in the moment, but it can still stand to serve the still suffering, still, wanting recovery person in addiction. And so it's kind of like this, I guess it's almost a time capsule, because for me, I'm like, did that really even happen? Did I live that? And so, that's how good recovery has been to me. And so now it's really just trying to share the reality of hope, the experiences, and just highlight what it took for me to find recovery, in hopes that somebody else is at that same place, that terminal uniqueness we discussed.
Right.
Hey, take some, if you try the whole buffet of substances, try this buffet of recovery. I talk about the buffet of my recovery in the book. So I hope that ties it together. Answer your question.
It does. Thank you. And it's actually, to me, what you said about that running record, it's like a running record. You're remaining accountable to that history that is now written and open to the public. You know what I mean? Like that's it's not like you can go down a path. If you'd have never written it, it's like you're saying, okay, look, this did happen, and I'm going to remain accountable to this journey through it, because if nobody knows, you can go right back to it, and no one's going to know that you shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? And you're keeping yourself personally responsible. And I'll be honest, we talk a lot about the main substances, alcohol, and narcotics, but there are so many levels of different types of addictions, and I will admit to still having problems with different various types of addictions. And I have asked myself the question, man, I'm on a show called The Recovering Addict. And am I doing enough? Am I keeping myself in check enough? If I fall and relapse into something, whether it's food, whether it's, whatever it is, whether it's too much social media, or, I go off and go relapse into, I don't know, alcohol or whatever that may be, is I sit there and say, well, then is that failure? Is that like falling from grace, like a pastor? Is it over?
Will you end up on TMZ and somebody's got pictures of you?
Exactly.
Stuffing your face.
And all that is just fear. It's just fear, because we talk about relapse as well. And if we do, I'm sure one of us will hold the other up and say, look, man, get it together. We're not gonna let you check out. So, but it's still in the mental part of your brain, but I think it's definitely good to remain accountable. And I think that's why that is so encouraged. Is it's not just like you're out there in la la land and no one's really knowing what's going on in your life, so I think some of us need it like this. And of course, I think we're all examples of that. We feel the need to say, hey, look, let's be completely honest. Let's get our story out there. Not everybody is going to go this route, but it has been a therapy to me, even years later, to make sure that we're actually remaining accountable to our history and this journey to come out. And I think that also takes a lot of courage. So thank you for sharing once again, Joe. I know we need to wrap everything up, but I really do appreciate you being with us. It was really, really cool. And I would love to have you back if you're cool with that at some point.
Man, there's so much more in this book. I think you're writing another one, correct?
Yeah, I've got actually in the works right now. It's actually something that'll be a compilation of reflections with tangible like prompts for journaling, for meditation. And so it'll be based on, a lot of the stuff I talk about in there, but it'll be more of something that people can engage within their personal life and recovery journey, rather than just reading about my experience. And so that was my hope, is to provide insight to tools and stuff.
So before we end this, I just want to shout out to everybody. We got a lot of comments on today's show. Miss Amy, Mr. Warren, how you doing? Michael Robertson,
what's up, Warren?
Secrets to Recovery. Man, got a lot of love on this one, man. So shout out to y'all. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much for watching. And I want you guys to remember, the next episode, we will be talking about detox. We have a lady that's going to come in and share her particular story, and we're going to be talking about detox. Awesome. Okay, so please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also remember that you are not alone. You guys have a great Sunday. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Thank you, Brandon, and we'll see you guys next week.
Rich, Brandon, thanks. Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you being with us. All right.